She lies unable, keeping orchids by her side. No tears to whisper on no. She feels the fall leaves like some memory. She opens up her eyes and smiles. Like sand and stable, but it locks me away to hide. The dark and lovely on and on. No tears to tell me life in summary. The light too warm in stride. I smile. Take the hand that needs you, babe. Look into my heart. The nails precede the bleeding. Standing here will just tear us apart.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm not muted, so you should be able to hear and see me in all this Technicolor glory. So we are going to start session 10. We are in chapter 5, starting with verse 22. We're going to do 10 verses. This is the wives and husbands section. I think it's interesting that there was a whole bunch of chatter on band regarding this particular chapter. Not quite sure why. Lots of chatter from the ladies. Anyway, so this is probably going to be an interesting session. Okay, so let me do this. Oh my gosh, let's go. That. Oh, that didn't work. Help me, anybody. Where's everybody at? Oh, look at that. Okay, and then I'm going to do this. I got all these things I got to touch. And then I got to turn this on. Woohoo! I just wish I had one. I could just push one button to do all that, but I can't. But, yeah. Yeah. Uh-oh. Christy, you look like you got stuff to say. No? Okay. I love this. I just got a little message that said my internet is unstable. How is that even possible? Anyway, I love the fact that we're trying to do stuff like this and we have internet gremlins everywhere. Okay. Father, I ask for your spirit of wisdom and revelation and show us what you want us to understand tonight with this part of chapter 5 of Ephesians. All right? Everybody okay? We all good? All right, here we go. All right, here we go. All right, I opted not to have slides this evening just so that we could actually, anyway, I just opted not to do that. So here we go. Chapter 5, wives and husbands. The unmarried apostle to the Gentile, Paul of Tarsus, will be talking to us about wives and husbands. Okay, here we go. And I trust all of you got your download. I put it up early. No, I actually didn't put it up early. I've been pretty much regularly putting them up on Sunday. So all of you, whatever. Here we go. Wives. Wives, are you listening? I'm just kidding. Submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. Okay, there shouldn't be any problem with this. Paul is saying that you should submit to your own husbands as you submit to the Lord. All right, let's see where he's going with this. All right, Genesis 3:16. I know Denise said something about this in band, and then I asked, well, what is it supposed to say? And I never got an answer. So, okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right.
I didn't see that.
That's okay. Now you're here on Zoom, like you're normally not on Zoom, so you'll be able to actually answer that question maybe tonight if you're comfortable doing so. All right, here we go.
Sure.
Awesome. To the woman, he said. Now he's talking. God said to the woman. He basically has a breakdown. He starts with the serpent, and he tells the serpent a thing or two. And then he goes to the woman and he says, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. This suggests that there was some pain prior to the fall. And it suggests that they had kids prior to the fall. I believe that we don't know how long they were in the garden before this incident. We don't know how long they were in the garden. We know that humans still have 9 months to be born in. So if they were there for 100 years, you can have some children in that time period. So, because everyone's like, oh, well, where did Cain find a wife? Because they don't know how to read the Bible. Or they just go, oh, the Bible only said A, B, and C. So that's as far as we can go. I think that's a little silly. There was cities when Cain was exiled. That's why you had to have that mark put on him so they wouldn't kill him. We have whole societies going on. We don't know when. We don't know when and how much, but we know that it existed. I don't believe they only had 3 children, and I don't believe they only, they didn't have children until after the fall or whatever. I mean, we're talking, we don't know how long they were there. So I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. My daughter, her first child, she said she really didn't feel any pain. But then she prayed for that. When she got pregnant, she prayed and fasted. She's like, look, if I'm like a believer, if I'm doing this God thing, I should be able to tap into on earth as it is in heaven. I shouldn't necessarily be subjected to this curse, because this is a curse. And she's had like 15 kids in the last 2 years or something crazy like that. It feels like that, but it's not. I hope she's not listening. We have a new one. He's a little like 3 weeks old or so. He's getting cuter and cuter. So she's had 5 natural childbirths in water delivery, whatever they're called. Someone help me, because I don't know what I'm talking about. I've been at all of them, and I'm very surprised at how she's able to manage through it without doing the whole, and she has experience, and I only talk to her about her because that's my main reference experience. She's had limited pain during childbirth because that's what she asked for. She asked the Lord for that. So, Christy, I saw you kind of nodding your head, so I think you understand what we're talking about. You probably agree that it is possible for this to happen. It should be possible. We shouldn't be under these curses, right? That's when Messiah comes in and he redeems all. So, he tells the woman, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. No one has a problem with that. It's this next line that everyone freaks out. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband or for your husband, but he shall rule over you. All right. Back to verse 23 of Ephesians. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church. There's nothing like, to me, I know I'm a man, I'm not a woman. To me, there's nothing egotistical about that. To me, this is like insanely, intensely difficult of a call or a thing to carry. I'm supposed to be like Jesus. Now, when you get saved, when you come to salvation, and we talk about this every once in a while because Christianity seems to have forgotten what they signed up for when they got saved. When they got saved, they basically said, when we got saved, we basically said, I'm surrendering my life, my rights, my blah, 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 and I make you the Lord of my life, and now begins the process of being transformed into the likeness of Jesus. That's the part we all forget, that we're supposed to be metamorphing, transitioning, transforming into, translating into Jesus, like Jesus. The mind of Jesus, the abilities, the powers, all that stuff. Well, that's one thing. No wonder that becomes like a philosophical thing for Christians, because it basically is. We don't approach this as a philosophical thing. We approach this as, no, this is what we signed up for. This is for real. We are supposed to be like Jesus, and we're supposed to be becoming, right? Begin to become like him on a daily. Well, this makes it a little bit realer. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church. That's fully saying I'm supposed to be like Jesus when it comes to my wife, just like Jesus is like he is to the church. What is that? What's that? Well, he's Messiah. He's Messiah to the church. He died for the church. He stood in the gap for the church. He made a way for the church. He selflessly did a whole bunch of stuff for the church. How am I supposed to be able to do that for one person? I can barely do it for myself. Well, this is why you probably shouldn't get married, Paul says somewhere down the road, as his personal opinion. So we're supposed to be the head of the wife like Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. He's the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. That's not... I don't think they've taught us this correctly or properly or effectively. I mean, I tell young guys that want to get married something I've never heard of in church, that most people have never heard of, and that's, you like this girl, you want to have sex with her, but what you need to understand is you want to get married to have that sex because, right, marriage, sex, covenant of marriage. But what you're not understanding is you're proclaiming to the invisible realm, good, bad, or indifferent, that you're ready to make the leap from disciple, if you're even being discipled, and most of these people aren't. You're saying, you're proclaiming to the invisible realm and to the air, to the spiritual realm, that you're ready to take the leap from disciple to head priest. And you don't even know that's what you're talking about. And you have no idea that, and you've never even considered that. And no one's ever told you that. But why? Because now, as a head priest, as a high priest, and the head of your household, you're responsible for another soul. This isn't about having sex. This is, you're walking into the only covenant you're allowed to make on earth unto death. And you're taking responsibility for another soul. And they've never been told this. So they get married, they consummate the marriage, and 3, 6, 9 months down the road, they're very confused because all hell is breaking loose in their lives and in their relationship and in their world, and they don't understand why. Well, because they're coming at you like a high priest. But he doesn't know that. Because no one told him he's a high priest. No one told him that's what he signed up for when he decided to marry that girl. He's thinking, right? Well, in the same way, we're supposed not. So it's even worse than that. I'm supposed to be Messiah to my wife. As the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. So let's look at 1 Corinthians 11, 3 through 10. But I want you to understand that the head of every man is Messiah. The head of a wife is her husband. And the head of Messiah is God. We have a tier. It's like Amway. Draw those circles. You got an upline, right? Father God, Messiah, and then the guy. Every man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head. This isn't what that means. I mean, that's right. That's not what that means. I almost said I was a Rasta. Oh, how weird was that? I used to have dreadlocks. We wear a lot of headgear when you have dreadlocks. You wear tams, right? Those knitted caps, right? To hide your dreads or to grow them and all that. That's not what that's talking about, because that's not a spiritual head covering. If for every man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head. And that's also, I don't think he's also not talking about a kippah, a prayer shawl, a talit, because, okay. But every wife who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. Are we talking about her physical head or her head? Her authority, probably both. Since it is the same as if her head were shaven. Who's got Deuteronomy 21? Awesome.
All right, 21, 10 through 14. When you go out to fight against your enemies, and Yehovah your Elohim shall give them into your hand, and you shall take them captive, and shall see among the captives a woman fair of form, and shall delight in her, and take her for your wife. Then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head and trim her nails, and put aside the mantle of her captivity, and shall dwell in your house, and mourn her father and her mother a month of days. And after that you shall go into her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And it shall be, if you are not pleased with her, then you shall let her go at her desire. But you do not sell her at all for silver. Do not treat her harshly, since you have humbled her.
Don't get sidetracked with that, because that's not what we're talking about. I just wanted to use, the reason why I brought it up is because that's the rule, or that's discussing the shaving of the head. I just didn't want someone to think, well, we're just throwing it out there nilly-willy. All right? So when a woman who prays or prophesies without her head covered dishonors her head, since it is the same as if her head were shaven. Because, right, she was a slave. If she's being selected for marriage, she had to shave, right? So it's a ritual piece. For if a wife will not cover her head, then she should cut her hair short. Again, as we'll see, we're talking physically as well as spiritually. But since it is disgraceful for a wife to cut off her hair or shave her head, right, because that's not the point he's making, let her cover her head. And we'll get to that in a second. For a man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God. You can't argue with that. It's in Genesis. But woman is the glory of man. She was made for the man. Who's got Proverbs 12:4?
I do. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband. She who brings shame is like rottenness in bones.
Awesome. We're talking about just bringing other stuff into it. For man was not made from woman, but woman from man. Neither was man created for woman, but woman for man. That is why a wife ought to have a symbol of authority on her head, which now took it into a different realm than just a piece of cloth. Here's what we teach at Chameleon Church regarding this. We know, simply because of the biblical text, that a woman's covering begins with her father, then her husband. But if she has neither a husband or a father, she could also then be covered by a spiritual leader. Most people will say pastor, right? If you're not married, if you don't have a father, and you don't have a spiritual covering, then you should be wearing a head covering. You should be wearing a physical covering over your head. That's what we teach. And that's in agreement with New Testament teaching. And so, based on what we just read, Paul is saying that is why a wife ought to have a symbol of authority on her head. He automatically just took this into a spiritual or a non-physical realm, because a symbol of authority would be a father, a husband, or a spiritual whatever. Why? I don't know if we're going to go there. Because of the angels. Genesis 6. Paul knew about this. Paul talks about this somewhere else, other places. Peter brings it up. Jude talks about it. The women were not covered. The watchers were able to select women and have sexual intercourse with them. They weren't protected from the angels. They weren't protected from the watchers. Incubus. We can go on, and this can get really nitty gritty. We don't have to, but it can. But there's a reason why a woman needs to have a symbol of authority, a father or a husband. You need to be covered because they're going to come after you. And the reason why they come after you is because your birth canal process deal is a portal. It takes a spiritual being, you run it through that system, and it comes out physical, a human. Apparently, They're not satisfied with their spiritual state, says Jude, and want to go through that process because they believe to some extent, I believe that they believe to some extent, they think they're missing out on something. This physical realm deal. So you run a spiritual entity through that canal and you come out human. And apparently that's a big deal. It's something apparently it's all the rage. And they want in on it. And so you need to be protected. You need to be covered. Which is why we teach, hopefully, if you're not married, hopefully you have a father, a human father, a birth father, or a whatever, a father that's spiritual, that has a clue that can cover and protect you spiritually. If you don't, hopefully you have a husband that has a spiritual clue that can look over, cover you and protect you. And if you don't have that, hopefully you have a leader, a pastor or whatever. I use the word pastor because that's what everyone uses. That has a clue that can watch over you and protect you. And we've had people come to my wife and I and ask for us to be that spiritual covering for them. This is why. Because of the angels. You want to be protected. You want to be safe. You want to have that covered. Now, verse 24. Are we good? We can discuss this. Okay. Verse 24. Now as the church submits to Christ, or Messiah, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Who has Colossians 3:18-19? Oh, by the way, I forgot.
It's Monday.
Yes, it is. Colossians 3:18 through 19. Who's got that?
I do.
Awesome.
Wives, submit to your own husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be bitter toward them.
See, it's not just one way. It's a two-way street. And we'll see that. We're going to get there. Watch. Husbands. I don't have a bell sound. Clang, 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 clang. Husbands. Woo-hoo. Love your wives as Messiah loved the church. And before we continue with verse 25, let's look at 1 Peter, verse 3-7 regarding this piece. Ready? Here we go. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel. Now, don't get all weird. The New Living Translation says, she may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner. That's the point we're going to get to. That is an incredibly important part. She is your equal partner. Complete Jewish Bible. Although your wife may be weaker physically, you should respect her since they are heirs with you. Some manuscripts, since you are joint heirs of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Whoa. See, this is why I say it doesn't matter what happens in a marriage. It doesn't matter what happens in a marriage. Who's at fault, whatever. None of that. It doesn't matter. End of the day, I believe it's on the husband. It's going to fall on the husband. Why? Because it says, regardless if she's cooperating, regardless if she's nice, regardless of whatever, you're supposed to deal with this woman like Jesus dealt with the church. We're not. How uncooperative are we with Jesus? The majority of the time. And what is he doing? He's not divorcing us. He's not doing any of that stuff. He died for us. And loved us to the point of giving us his life. That's the point here that Paul's making. This is the level that we're supposed to be functioning as men, as husbands, when it comes to our wives. And we have to do that so that our prayers may not be hindered. Not hers. It didn't say so that her prayers may not be hindered. No, our prayers. Remember, we're supposed to be the leaders. Remember, we're supposed to be the head. Remember, we're supposed to be like Jesus to the church. I don't want my prayers hindered. Cristina and I are going to, next May, this coming May, I think is our 40th year of living together. I haven't been this guy for 40 years. I don't know how many of those years I've been this guy. I'm not going to ask her. but you see what I'm saying? It's serious stuff. Verse 25. Husbands, love your wives as Messiah loved the church and gave himself up for her. I don't think that's fair. How fair is that? I'm supposed to give up my life, my dreams, my caros. That's what Jesus did. He didn't live this life for himself. He had one focus, and that was to die for us. He gave himself up for her. Something that Tim just said in the Zoom chat, which is really the case, because this isn't about a man, Lord. It's not. I'm emphasizing the stuff that takes away the misinterpretation or the misunderstanding of this section. It's not women submit to the man, and that's it. No. It's like, no, hey guys, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is about the men, not the women. All right, let me just repeat what it is that we as guys are supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be like Jesus, who's the head of the church, his body, and is himself its savior. That's a heavy, stinking thing I have to put on my head. How am I supposed to be a savior to anyone? Then we go down over here. And it says we're supposed to love our wives as Christ loved the church. And we're supposed to live our wives in an understanding way. This isn't based on whether they're cooperating or not. This is what we're supposed to do regardless. Showing honor. Because she's our equal partner. We might have to, support her and, lift her up and do those things because she's the, quote, weaker or whatever you want to, That's not we're supposed to be their helpmate because they're our joint heir. They're our partner in this. And we want to do these things, and we have to do these things so that our prayers may not be hindered. See, this is more about us than you. We're supposed to love you, our wives, as Christ loved the church, as Messiah loved the church and gave himself up for her. There's nothing egotistical or chauvinistic about that. It's the exact opposite. That he might sanctify her. What the freaking hell? Christianity teaches us that we can't even sanctify ourselves, let alone how am I going to sanctify my wife? It gets worse. That he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. I have failed. So that I might present her to Jesus in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing. Because that's what Jesus did. Jesus gave up his life for me so that he could sanctify me and cleanse me by the washing of water with his word, with his Torah, with the scriptures, with the Tanakh, so that he could present me to the Father in splendor, without spot or wrinkle. That's what I'm supposed to be able to do with my wife. I'm supposed to do that. I'm supposed to give myself up for her so I can sanctify her, cleanse her with the word, so I can present her to Messiah in splendor without spot or wrinkle, that she might be holy and without blemish. How is that possible? How am I supposed to be able to present my wife blameless, holy to Messiah? Well, he just told us how. I have to give my life up for her. I have to love her. I have to care for her. I have to treat her with respect as a partner, an equal partner. I have to cover her. I have to wash her with the word. I have to sanctify her in all those ways. I suck at this. Let me just say that. So who's got Song of Solomon 4:7?
I do. You are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you.
That's awesome. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. I sang in a band, I love myself a lot. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as Messiah does the church, because we are members of his body. Who's got Genesis? Anyone got
I've got
Genesis?
Yeah. Genesis 2:23.
23.
Okay. And the man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman because she was taken out of man."
Verse 31, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. That's cited from Genesis 2:24. Jesus talks about it in Matthew 19:5 and Mark 10:7 and 8. You guys want to read those? Look at Kaylin just went into Narnia. Did you see how she just walked into the woods? She's anybody who's got Genesis 2:24, who's got Matthew 19:5, and who's got Mark 10:7 through 8?
I got Genesis. This is why a man is to leave his father and mother and stick with his wife, and they are to be one flesh.
I'll do 19:5. And said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh.
And Mark 10?
For this
For
reason,
this reason,
sorry.
go ahead.
Are you sure? It's okay. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh.
This mystery is profound, Paul says. And I am saying that it refers to Messiah and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. 1 Peter 3:1-6. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, so even if you don't have so he's talking to the woman right here. So even if your husband does not obey the word of God, let's say, whatever's going on there, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, and vice versa. Husbands with wives that do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their husbands, when they see your respect and pure conduct. 1 Corinthians 7. To the rest I say, I, not the Lord. This is his personal opinion. that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever, or if any sister has a husband who is an unbeliever, and she consents or he consents to live with them, they should not divorce each other. If any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Leaving partner should stick around. In such cases, a brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Continuing, do not let your adorning be external, and braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, we're back to Peter, or the clothing you wear, but let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children, if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. I like that. Do not fear anything that is frightening. Who's got Proverbs 3, 21 through 26?
I do. My son, do not lose sight, will be your confidence, and will keep your foot from being caught.
I like that. That's the end of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to do it.
Right.
Kind of change context there, that last verse.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? Hopefully I was able to dispel some goofy teaching on this. I think this is one of the goofiest things that can be taught. And
well, I can witness for certain 0 male youth of the species ever been taught this. In my experience, I have been absolutely the misogynistic receipt of every single male unit ever in my life, up to and including my father, my mother's father, and so forth.
Yeah.
Because of error in teaching.
I think it's insane. Yeah. I mean, again, that's the enemy's job, is to pervert and twist and, do everything he can to rob, steal, destroy, and kill, and just make a mess of things. The amount of responsibility that lies on the man based on this is heavy. And I apologize for those men in your life, Denise, for doing the exact opposite of what
your fault.
This says. I know it's not my fault, but I still, that stuff really bothers me. That stuff pisses me off.
And most of them gone, Yeshua will judge. It's all good. Romans 12:19.
Anyone else? This is open forum. You guys, this is, somebody needs to go find where Frank is.
Hey, Alan, this might,
yes,
and
sir.
This is probably a basic question, and I think I understand most of it, but can we just hit on for a second the covering?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the most part, I understand the men's side of it, and I understand. It sounds weird from a spiritual aspect, the women's side of it, but obviously, someone wearing a hat is not considered a covering necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to sort that out, I guess. Just,
I'm thinking maybe when a woman puts on a head covering, that she's putting it on, knowing that she's putting it on for that very reason. If she doesn't have a father or a husband, or
that actually have a shawl that they actually pull over their head when they pray, type of thing.
Some do, not everyone does, but some do.
Right.
It's it's the most basic example of this instruction is literally, like you see, we've all seen it, someone having their head covered. We believe that it's a spiritual covering, simply because of what the text says. So if you do have a covering such as a father or a husband, those are the two that are going to be the strongest ones. If you don't have those two, then you're going to want to be submitted or under some sort of spiritual authority, like people usually say a pastor or something. But did that make sense?
Yeah, it did.
I'm thinking if I'm a woman and I don't have covering and I'm obeying this and I'm putting a head covering on, I'm putting it on knowingly. It's like when I put on my tassels, I put them on knowingly.
Right. Okay.
Good question.
Can I share a few things?
Please.
But when he goes and he says this is a profound mystery, he's going back to his understanding of Torah, those 4 levels of Torah. So what he just went through, you can almost read his mind saying, there's so much in here. I wish I could get to the depth of every little thing. But when you look at what he just said in those 4 verses right there, remember, it was always predicated on verse 21, submit one to another out of reverence for Christ. And the word covering there, which is the chalash, which means protection. And in the understanding of the protection, like you said, from the angels and all those type of things, being a covering is more than just being a father and a husband or priest. It's taking action in faith.
Yeah.
And he's really trying to point something out, because he changes gears in the next chapter and he talks about our warfare. But to get back to this, the interesting thing is that when you submit to one another, it comes, the Hebrew word, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was, bear with me one second. The understanding came from hupatasso, which means to get up underneath. So just like what Jesus did is he got up underneath when he saved us, and he took that place of ourselves, our sin, and he died for our sin. Well, Adam did the same thing. He could have said, get out of here, Eve. Take her away, Lord. Get me a new one. He didn't. There was something profound in that. And what the husband is supposed to do and what the wife is supposed to do, submitting therefore one to another, equal partners, we're supposed to cover one another in that place. That's what mutual submission is.
Yeah, it's a linking shields thing.
It's linking, and you get up underneath to support. That's what Jesus does for us every day.
Yeah.
That's what a husband and wife do with each other every day. That's what honor is. And so when we get to that part, I mean, you could mine this forever. This is one of those verses that you mine and you go, oh my gosh, I just learned this.
Yeah.
And I'm going, like this morning, I'm going, man, help me to be walking in the spirit to love Linda like I'm supposed to. Because 10 minutes later, I can forget it. That quick. I don't know. Are you guys like me? I don't know.
It's so
you ever
bad.
be like that?
Yeah.
And her the same way with me, believe me. She can kick my butt in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So that one thing is to get up underneath. This is reverence for Christ. He will never let us down that way. He will always support us at our weakest point.
Yeah.
And can we do that? That takes a lifetime, and it takes walking, and it takes stumbling, and it takes getting back up and repenting. Yeah. So just a thought.
Yeah. I've mentioned before, we've talked about it a little bit in various platforms or whatever it is that we do here. What if come judgment day, it's time to be judged, and I'm standing before the Lord, and he goes, all right, it's your turn. And I walk up there, and he goes, have a seat. I sit down, and these 2 angels bring in Cristina, and they stand her before the Lord, and that's how I'm going to be judged. Yikes. And vice versa. I mean, imagine. That's heavy. Joanna, what's up? I see your virtual hand.
Yeah. So, a question around this is that in the garden, obviously that was not Adam's role, correct?
No, I think it would be his role. He might, I mean, I don't think this information is new. I think all of this information was in the garden.
But so then, because it's only after the garden that it says, the whole labor thing and all that. And I guess my question here is, did this come because Adam didn't protect Eve from the serpent?
I would say that's a good piece of it. I mean, he was standing right there. What the heck was he freaking thinking? Apparently he wasn't.
He had the dominion. So he could have vetoed her. It's like, woman.
He could have done a whole bunch of stuff. He could have stomped on that serpent's head. He could have done something. Apparently he didn't do anything. And then he took a bite. He ate of the fruit. To make matters worse, he actually partook of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
And then, of course, blamed her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That didn't work out very well, did it? God's like looking at him like, yeah, no. I think Adam, yes, I think that might be, that has to play into this, in my opinion, because he was there. He had dominion over, like Denise said, and he didn't do anything about it. He didn't do anything about it. I've been in such scenarios where I've seen men not do anything about something that's happening with their wife. And I've watched it, and I want to jump in so bad and beat the guy, or give him a good slap upside the head, because they're not, they're not, what I'm saying? They're like, they're literally, they shrink back, and their wives exposed, and it's like, I can't. How can you do that? I see it a lot. I've seen it a lot, and it's maddening.
It's a big tendency for men to abdicate, and when they were instructed to keep the garden. That Hebrew word is shamar, and that includes guarding it. So he was abdicating full on, and he was going with the flow and, kind of being lazy like men tend to do.
Yeah.
And, and you think about the Torah too, the father and the husband can cancel a vow if a woman makes one rashly. But for guys, there's no equivalency.
No.
So
we're supposed to know better.
Saying, right. And not only that, like what I was saying earlier was like the proper framing for this conversation is it's not about power, but people get hung up on the power dynamics. It's about function. And, if the man has to function as Yeshua, who came not to be served, but to serve, who, made himself nothing, taking on the form of a servant, who sacrificially gives, I totally agree with you. It's the heavier end of the stick, but it's a form of function, not of, and I think for both the man and the woman,